Well, it's back to school time. When you were a kid growing up in the 80s, did your parents buy you the name brands or did they buy you the store brands? Stick around, let's talk about it.
All I need are some tasty waves, a cool buzz, and I'm fine.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am Graham, back with another video. And this week's video is about back to school clothes. My youngest is about to go back to school. He's finally going to be a sophomore in high school. And of course, it's already talked about, well, what clothes am I going to get? What shoes am I going to get? Who's going to buy me what? So they can go back to school in fashion. Now, growing up in the 80s, what was cool about it is we had, not only did we have the Sunday paper with all the ads in it, but we had a Sears catalog, we had a Montgomery Ward catalog, and we had a JCPenney catalog. Now, I had an older brother, 3 years older than me, and my mom always bought him the name brand. So he got to wear the Nikes, he got to wear the Levi jeans, the Girbaud jeans, and the Guess shirts, the Polo, the Ralph Lauren. And I didn't. My mom bought me the store brands, the ones from Montgomery Ward, the ones from Sears, the ones from JCPenney, and from Bell's, which was a store that we had in Texas, but I think they were national at some point in time, kind of like a Mervyn's. So it got me thinking about the brands that weren't so cool back then, but now they are pretty cool, especially with the Gen Z kids using that style and selling on Depop and on what's that other platform, Poshmark. It's kind of making a comeback with the younger generations, and I think that's pretty cool. But let's talk about it. So this video is obviously going to be perspective from a guy. I'm not super familiar with the girl brands, obviously, so I'm only speaking from the brands that I knew as a guy. Growing up, the main jean that boys wore was Levi and Wrangler, and that was pretty much it. Later on, towards the late 80s, early 90s, you had Girbaud come out, you had Z Cavaricci, although they had been out longer. That's just around the time that I remember guys were wearing them. Now, for the girls, what I do remember is you had Jordache, you had Guess, you had Gitano. Trying to think, there's one more. I don't know. I think that's about it that I can remember. Drop a comment below on some of the female brand jeans that you wore back in the day. However, my brother was 3 years older than me, and I've always been taller than him, so I didn't get hand-me-downs because I was taller, my feet were bigger, and so I never did get to wear the stuff that he got to wear. Again, he got Nike, he got Reeboks, he got Levi jeans, and Guess, Polo, and whatnot. Me, on the other hand, I didn't get those. So we had the ability to look through all of those catalogs that we had back in the day to where we can kind of pick out the style. You saw what was going to be the style for that year coming up, or at least that's what the catalog people or the manufacturers wanted you to think that was going to be the style. So we would scurry through them and of course use the Sunday paper ads to put together kind of our wardrobe. So without further ado, let's kind of get into some of the brands. Now, in my part of Texas, these were considered the knockoff versions. Maybe in your part of the world, they were name brand. So not trying to offend anybody by saying that a brand was cheap if it really wasn't. But in my personal experience, they were considered the cheap ones. You did get picked on a little bit, especially in this first one, would be Rustler jeans. Now, at the time, those were from Walmart. I had no idea. Of course, now they put it on their brand that they're part of Wrangler, that they'd always been made by the parent company that owns Wrangler. But at the time, we didn't know that. And so they were just referred to as the Walmart pants. So when the kids got to wear Levi's and Wranglers, I show up wearing Rustlers. You kind of got picked on a little bit. You got made fun of a little bit. Now, Rustlers are still proudly sold. My 15-year-old who's a skateboarder says that a lot of the community wears the Rustlers because, number one, they're inexpensive, but they're really thick denim and they're really good to skate in. So if you wipe out in them, you rip them, which they rarely rip them, but if you do, you can go grab yourself another pair at Walmart for a fairly inexpensive price. So next topic, let's talk about shoes. Again, back in the 80s, the brand that most kids wore was Nike, and they wore Reebok. Reebok was still kind of, they were number two, obviously, but they kind of made a different style of shoe. They were more into the aerobic side. They had some different style shoes. They weren't straight up just trying to make apples to apples comparisons with Nike. Um, my brothers got the Nike. My mom ended up buying me LA Gear and BK or British Knights. Now, I believe both of those companies are still around. It seems like they've made a resurgence. And of course, if you go on eBay and you look at original BKs from the early 90s and they're in great condition, they are very, very expensive. But back in the day, obviously everybody knew. I know it's shallow, but you know, your parents spend the money, they go buy you something that they had to spend their hard-earned money to get, but you still weren't that grateful because you had a little bit of resentment that your brother got to wear the name brand, and you saw the other kids wearing the name brand, and you didn't. So you had to wear the LA Gear. BK wasn't so bad. LA Gear was roasted hard, and so. But again, there's still two brands that are around. I'm not much in that. I'm not a sneakerhead, so I don't know if they're considered a really cool sneaker to quality wise, or if they're collectible. But I do know pretty much anything from the 80s and 90s in that genre that is original and in really good condition still fetches a pretty good value. And then, of course, making our way to from shirts to pants to everything in between. Again, we would go to Sears, we would go to Montgomery Ward, or we would go to JCPenney. And because they all had catalogs, we would get those and get to scale through the pages and pick what we wanted. And then sometimes, you know, that was a little bit more pricier than even Walmart. So then if Walmart had that or Kmart had a similar thing like that, my mom would go buy them there. So, you know, you can see from some of the pictures putting up, styles were kind of all over the place, but you can see how you were able to plan your wardrobe going into the new school season. I don't know how it's done now. I guess with just so much social media, people look at Instagram and they look at TikTok and kind of see what's cool or what they think is cool. I know I have to go pick up my son from his school from time to time, and then I, you know, obviously I see the younger kids on social media, not really into the whole skinny jean, definitely not into the your pants sagging and your ass hanging out of your pants. I mean, you can't even run in something like that. It's actually kind of hilarious. But I mean, also too, when I was a kid or even a teenager, wearing socks with slides was like a taboo, like, you know, or what we would call thongs. We call them thongs down here, or flip flops. When you see people wearing them with socks on, it was just kind of like frowned upon. Still something to this day I do not do. I still have not been able to wrap my head. Of course, now it's part of the culture. Everybody wears slides of all different brands and they wear socks with it. But we were part of that generation where we started seeing that emerge, I think, around 1990, 1991. And I guess by that time I was already, you know, 17, 18 years old and just didn't think it looked right. I still don't think it looks right. But my favorite, and I have to say, I kind of even liked it back then, like it even more now. And I would have to say my favorite brand from back in the day, and I'll end it with this, is Bugle Boy. Bugle Boy was sold at Bell's, and I believe it's some other merry-go-round or something like that. But I got all of my Bugle Boy from a store called Bell's down here in Texas. And I think, I mean, they'd been around since the late 70s, but really came on at least into my eyes in the mid 80s. And anytime that a brand kind of came out with their top of the line, Bugle Boy was right there. And then, of course, they got into the streetwear in the late 80s, early 90s, that I think they surpassed a lot of those other brands and kind of created an identity of their own. What I really liked about them was that I loved Stussy. I wore a lot of Stussy at the time, but it was really expensive back then. And then Bugle Boy came out with kind of their version of tribal, what I always call a tribal shirt, a tribal banded t-shirt and shirts, and just an overall really cool style. And I can tell you what, when you find an original like 90s version Bugle Boy in the thrift store, it's just kind of an amazing feeling, and they're worth a lot of money. They also got very popular for their version of the parachute pants. And no, those aren't the ones that MC Hammer wore. Those weren't parachute pants. But the real type of parachute pants that the breakdancers wore, Bugle Boy had their own brand with the zippers where you can unzip them and they can become shorts. You can zip them back up and they become one pant. I've been trying to find Bugle Boy online, and again, people want a lot of money for it. Skater wise, again, a lot of the skaters still love to wear it if they can find it that fits them. And just overall, like, I wish I would have been more appreciative of that brand back in the day, because I still think they're amazing. You see the pictures that I'm flashing across the screen, and they were kind of crazy, but nowadays I look back and I just think they're super cool. So what were some of the brands that you wore back then? What were some of the ones that I didn't name, or, agree? You went to the same places, but what were some of the brands that you think were maybe a store brand, or a second-rate brand that your parents bought you? Drop a comment down below. Let me know. Expand on that. Let me know your thoughts. And again, if this is the type of content that you like, and I've earned your subscription, please consider subscribing to the channel. Click the like button. Hit that bell notification. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.